Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talking Logistics, where we have conversations with thought leaders and newsmakers in the supply chain logistics industry. It's my great pleasure to welcome back to the program Adam Campaign, who is the CEO of ClearMetal. And today we're going to talk about 2018 Outlook, the year global shipping embraces artificial intelligence. Now, AI was certainly one of the most talked about technologies this past year, and certainly AI will continue to have an impact in the months and years ahead. Um, you know, what have been some of the lessons learned so far this year? What are some of the remaining challenges or opportunities that are out there? And how will artificial intelligence technology continue to evolve and drive innovation in the industry in the year ahead? Well, those are just some of the questions we're going to discuss in today's episode, and it's great to welcome Adam back to the program to share his insights and perspective on this topic based on his work with clients in this area. So Adam, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Adrian. Good to be back.
Well, Adam, as I mentioned, in my opening remarks there, I mean, artificial intelligence was certainly one of the most talked about, technologies, this past year. But before we kind of talk about what's in store for 2018 and beyond, let's talk about the state of the industry today. I mean, where are we from a technology standpoint and from a market education and adoption standpoint?
Yeah, sure, Adrian. So from a technology standpoint, I mean, we're there. We've seen this past year the progressive companies in the space start to test and use some of the early technologies out there like ours. And I think the industry, at least in some parts, has understood that this is real, it's here, and it works. So from a technology perspective, we're there. I think what you talk about in terms of industry education and progress and where folks are really in the transformation journey is, by and large, the industry is early but getting more progressive. We are out there obviously speaking to a whole bunch of companies, and it's clear which companies are early in that process and just trying to educate themselves, and which are farther along and starting to make moves. Now, if I were running a large retailer or manufacturer or even a 3PL that represents them, clearly I know where on that spectrum I'd like to be, because we've seen this movie play out before and understand what happens both to those who are too slow to adopt and those that are on the cutting edge to differentiate and compete. But really the state of the industry, I'd sum up to say, knowing full well that the Amazon effect is in full force, which makes people truly understand that digital transformation is required and required now. And also the realization that until today, there haven't been many solutions out there that solve the underlying data problem, which is really at the root, the cause a lot of the issues, whether you're talking status codes in container movements, all the way up to big strategic initiatives that CEOs are talking about. We could talk more about that, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think, certainly with the companies that I talked to, and certainly I went to a lot of conferences this year, and certainly a lot of interest in AI. A lot of times when I asked them, are you kind of implementing any kind of solutions in this area? The answer was no, because, a lot of them were kind of stuck in, not knowing where to begin, or I would say they were kind of in the analysis paralysis kind of environment where they want to keep studying it, but just don't have the the push, if you will, to actually get started. But let's so you touched upon this a little bit. I mean, if you look back over the course of the year now, you've had the opportunity to work with a number of clients, and obviously you've talked to a number of different companies about AI. I mean, what has surprised you the most, so far? And what are the biggest learnings or takeaways that you've had?
Yeah, sure. I mean, two that I'll share. I think, first is that it's surprising how many companies out there are looking to solve world hunger, I'll say, sort of all at once, right? They believe, despite the fact that they talk about a transformational journey and transforming the overall supply chain, there's a lot of belief out there that all this can be solved all at once. And when people look out, they believe they see solutions that are going to do that. And as we know, and I think as history tells, transformation is a journey. It's not a snap of the fingers. And what's more important, and this is what we're often trying to evangelize and educate, what's more important is the methodology with which you adapt and solve kind of underlying data issues, at least in our case, that will enable you to set up for the long-term supply chain and true transformation rather than slapping sort of a Band-Aid on it. So I think one surprising thing is that it's the dissonance between talking about transformation yet believing things can be solved in one fell swoop, and it's more of a path. The second thing that we are sort of surprised at, and it's quite similar, is how people are looking to solve this problem similar to the ways they have before, right? They're looking for technology off the shelf that often looks, all kind of sexy with UIs and user interfaces and things like this, without really taking a fundamentally different approach. And when I say that, I actually am talking about data. So what we haven't seen in the industry until today is first solving that data problem before giving yourself an application that does the day-to-day operational things. And, a long analogy, but simplifying it down to Google versus Apple Maps, right? So what Google Maps did very well was it made sense of all the data around point of interests around the world before ever, providing search and navigation and real-time traffic. Whereas Apple Maps, came out and had that sort of PR scare around its effectiveness because it hadn't solved that underlying data problem. And our company views the supply chain challenges in a similar way. You first have to solve the data problem before providing applications and making different decisions. And we are surprised to find so many companies taking the same kind of approach of an overlaid technology solution or application on top of bad data that's not going to help them fundamentally change, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's been a historical problem, ever since I've been in the industry and analyzing the industry, where they look at technology as a silver bullet solution, for supply chain visibility, for some of these things that they want to do, when the reality is that foundational component, meaning, timely, accurate, complete, data, is kind of missing, right? In order to be able to, effectively feed these systems and be able to achieve the objectives that they're trying to achieve, from this technology investments. So you brought up the data, piece. And I think in the previous episode you were on, and maybe it was in the guest commentary you wrote, you talked about how actually, artificial intelligence and machine learning addresses that, right? In terms of helping to, resolve that issue and create that strong foundation. I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, and I think that's so core. You're right, exactly what I was just sharing. So, a lot of people view AI and machine learning as this kind of Star Wars stuff. It's incredibly fancy. It's futuristic. We want to get to it one day, is what, some people are saying, without realizing, as you bring up, Adrian, that these different kind of technologies, machine learning and AI, can and are, at least by us, being used to make sense of and solve the underlying data problem. So to get very tangible with it, if you look at the information in the industry, stay just within the transportation segment and look at gate in, gate outs, 315 EDI messages. It isn't clear to kind of the average eye or the average technology system all these different errors that come across, right? You might see a vessel departure code at the same time as a vessel arrival, or two different timestamps on a vessel departure without it being clear whether that's a departure from origin or a transshipment port. Inland, you might see a status message that says delivered versus out for delivery, which are obviously very different things. These are just a few examples of thousands of different anomalies that are inherent in supply chain data. And rather than employing hundreds of kind of manual hours to true this up, things can be made a lot more efficient by actually employing machine learning and technology to assist people in more legibly reading that data. And so I don't mean it from the standpoint of replacing jobs with technology. I mean adding a perfect co-pilot, which is a very powerful computer and an AI system to make sense of data so that people can actually be a lot more strategic with their time in managing exceptions and doing so proactively rather than trying to decipher what the status or current location is of a particular shipment, for example.
Right, right. No, that's a great example. And I think, I think people get into, they jump ahead to your earlier point. They jump ahead with, AI and artificial and machine learning to talk about things like, predictive and get there. And of course, that's going to be a core part of the value proposition ultimately. But they don't think too much about how this technology can actually be used to, fix that underlying, data quality issue, which I think was one of my key learnings, this year as well. So let's shift gears a little bit now and let's look ahead, right? Yeah, it's 2018 and beyond. I mean, what are some of the key, industry trends and themes that are kind of setting the stage for AI innovation?
Yeah, and I think looking back a bit in history helps, right? If you look at 2014-15, I think that was the year that people were acknowledging, we're in trouble and there's a whole lot of challenge, at least more so than in the past. I think 2016 was the real acknowledgement that we ought to do something about it. And this past year, 2017, has been about the progressive companies in the industry starting to test and determine whether or not these technologies are here and real and working and delivering value. And so I think what's setting up for 2018 being the year of AI is the fact that many have actually undergone, this process that I just described to now see the technology is here, it's real, it's delivering value. Those that adopt it will compete with great advantage, and those that simply will be slower will fall behind in a number of ways and fail to catch up to fierce competition out there, whether it's Amazon or someone else.
Right. So, I mean, I know you were at the CSCMP conference this year, and you spoke with a couple of companies there that were kind of some of the early adopters here, or kind of working with exploring some of these possibilities. And I think you're right. I think, coming into 2018, I think what I expect and what I hope to see is more of these case studies, if you will, and proof points. And then the challenge becomes, those that have waited, are you going to heed the call, if you will, and take action, or are you going to continue to, be frozen by analysis paralysis and kind of continue to wait? I think that's going to, be interesting to see, what develops there. Based on your work with clients and your learnings, this past year, I mean, what's the business value of AI innovations for, manufacturers, retailers, and the 3PLs that serve them?
Yeah, it's tremendous, and it's across the supply chain. I'd say the overall theme and the true value is solving that underlying data problem and what that enables for a company in short-term operations, longer-term strategic planning, or sort of even the eventual state of the supply chain that's required for the future. As we work with customers, you could take the being able to determine where to source materials from, where to manufacture from, based on certain risk factors and quality metrics, the ability to use AI and machine learning to determine whether to ship by air or ocean, and where to procure and which service provider to procure that freight from, through the transportation space, being able to determine shipment location, being able to predict exceptions and final arrival, all the way through warehousing and last mile. I think a good example, if we look at something quite tangible, is take a large supplier, right? Again, their ability to use clean and fundamentally sound data to make sense of where those goods are coming from and are they on time, how to procure the right type of freight for that service, assessing risk of when and how those goods will show up with high quality and reliability at their final destination. Even we're seeing frontline productivity gains that are quite tremendous in terms of how supply chain professionals are prioritizing their time, focusing on the right shipments based on predicted risk, and being able to focus in on the right shipments at risk to make alternate arrangements, or at least notify internal parts of the company or external customers or 3PLs. We see that stemming really across a few teams. So on the sales team, we see suppliers being able to make better partners with their customers by providing tighter SLAs and delivery times. We see customer service personnel being much more able to focus on the right information and share that information in their own companies and with customers. And even on the finance side, in the CFO's office, being able to understand, exactly when to invoice customers to generate even just a day or two of free cash flow and some working capital has also helped. So, I could go on and on. There's so much, value and incremental gains, right, in using a different kind of computing to solve core problems. But I think really where enterprises are getting excited about the work we've done together is on finally unlocking the value of the underlying data in their supply chain and setting them up for true competitive advantage as they look forward.
I think that's still it's such a powerful point, because I think it's always been, to me, data quality management. I think everybody recognizes the importance of that, but it was always something that people always like to point the finger at, right? So it's not, if you talk to people in supply chain logistics, they'd say, well, that's IT's problem, or IT ought to, fix that. And then you talk to people in IT and they would say, that's not our problem. Just get your suppliers and your trading partners to send you, clean data, and you wouldn't have a problem, right? So, and so basically people just say, okay, we'll just learn to deal with it, right? And I think, we're at the point right now where, companies might have been able to get away with, Band-Aid approach, or just dealing with this bad data with, workarounds and so forth. But it's becoming, the margin for error is becoming smaller and smaller, that, I think now is the time to really start, attacking this in a more, intelligent way. I think part of the challenge has been, I'm kind of curious what your thought here is, part of the reason people are attracted by the software side of things, if you will, the user interfaces and the nice maps, and and even the stuff that, quite honestly, you guys do as well, right? The predictive components of it, is that you could, that, and everything you just talked about, that's kind of where the business case is, right? And but as we've been talking about, the data quality piece has got to come first, but that's tougher to sell, right? If you walk into a room and say, how do you put a price point or cost savings around data quality management? It sounds like, and you correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like companies are becoming more aware that there is a cost associated with poor data quality, and that they're able to quantify that, and that they're able to see the business value around applying machine learning to that aspect of it.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I mean, I think selling data quality standalone, it's challenging to make tangible. But when you realize, and the picture we paint is that all of the core decisions of the business, right? Decisions you make with suppliers, decisions you make with partners, internal decisions around how to manage your supply chain, all those decisions are assisted, right, by technology systems and data. And all those decisions actually then stem back into the root, problem of this data being poor, right? If the data is not right, how are you supposed to make optimal decisions off of it? And how are you supposed to operate a lean supply chain, if you will? So what we're able to do is actually show how data quality is not just a standalone, and I use quality loosely, but, making sense of the data is not this standalone value. It's actually the thing that's empowering all of the metrics, all of the predictions, all of the optimization, all the decisions and strategic planning that a company is making. And so I think if you look at it through that lens, not separately, but what is empowering all this stuff, it starts to really become a different story. And I think that's where customers are really, waking up to see the value.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it goes back to your earlier point about this being, truly a journey, and that's where the journey begins, right? If you don't start there, if you immediately jump to the, the end of the journey without having gone through the, the beginning, you're really not going to, reach the objectives that you've set out for yourself. Adam, we're kind of, getting short on time here, so I'm just going to go right to my last question. As a way to wrap up, I mean, what actions should manufacturers, retailers, and 3PLs take to get, started on this journey, and kind of any words of caution or things that they should look out for, as they move forward on this journey?
Sure. Yeah, I'd sum it up to 4 things. I think first, companies need to be sober about where along the transformation journey they really are, right? Are they just in the education phase, or, are they really making moves to differentiate themselves and gain strategic advantage? and derive value out of a supply chain that could be a lot better. So I think the first is understand where you are, and that should dictate kind of the folks you talk to and how you go about planning for things. I think second, beware, I'd say, of the buzzwords and the shiny objects. I'd say, it's very easy to talk about AI and machine learning. It's very different to have applications that are and a methodology that's fully based on those capabilities. In the same way, it's very easy to be enamored by fancy screens and applications, but another thing to really get true value out of a product that is helping companies make different kinds of decisions. Third, I'd say is, there are a lot of technology providers out there, and my advice would be do research and gain a partner that matches the methodology with which you want to transform your whole supply chain, right? This isn't a one application purchase or a solve world hunger kind of purchase. This is about a transformational path, and companies ought to work with partners that they believe they have a vision match with in terms of, how to go about that transformation and what's required. And then, fourth, I'd say engage. I gave kind of the previous few years that have been sort of patient to understand what's happening, what's out there, what to do, and whether, we need to or not. And now we're at the phase where 2018 is going to be a year where companies really pull ahead and not. And so my advice would be, engage and remember that engaging can be light and cheap and quick and delivering immediate value, not like, decades prior that are, multi-year, massive investments of time and speculation.
Yeah, those are all great points and great advice, and certainly I'm looking forward to see what the weeks and months ahead have in store, because I think the best is yet to come, in this whole area, in this whole field, which is what makes this industry so fun and exciting. Well, Adam, with that, again, thank you for taking the time to be with us today and kind of share your perspective and your learnings and your advice on what will make 2018 the year for artificial intelligence in the industry. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. Pleasure.
And I want to thank those of you that joined us. If you're watching this episode on demand, either at the Clear Metal website or on Talking Logistics, and you've got a question or a comment for Adam, you can post it there. I'm sure that he'll be more than happy to respond via that medium. Again, thank you for joining us, and look forward to seeing you in a future episode of Talking Logistics. Have a great day.